Serious, people who have been in a hostage situation, what was it like, and how was it resolved? I was 19 and living in my first apartment. Next door was a trucking yard, and on the far corner of the block a super shady bar. So there I am in the backyard, trying to plant flowers, with my 6-month-old Rottweiler puppy doing her thing when this dude just flew over the fence from the trucking yard and ran right into my apartment. I, being an idiot, and the dog, being an idiot too, both ran in after him. He was right behind the door and grabbed the shovel from me. Slammed the door shut. He was in hysterics. Shut up. Just be quiet. OMG, please just don't make any noise. Shut the blinds. Dude. Chill. Am I screaming? No. You are. I shut the blinds. He locked the door, hunkered behind it. Dog is licking up blood. Because dude is stabbed. Cut on the chest here and there, flesh wounds, and some nice ones going right through his palms and a couple pretty good ones on his forearms. He's also high as balls. So yeah. Thank goodness my folks did a lot of drugs / had a lot of druggy friends, so it wasn't like I was this means I shall absolutely be robbed and raped. Let me panic now. And that I'd been in the army for a couple of years by that point, so my stress reactions were a little more than the average person's. I said I was getting my first aid kit. He said not to move and to shut up. Dude, you are bleeding on my shit. Oh okay. I tried some preliminary suggestions that I should maybe just go now, and he's like, that's not happening. You're not going anywhere. Then follows 4 hours where we sit and chat and I make him tea and he plays with my dog in my darkened, closed up apartment. When I judge I've built up rapport and that he's come down enough to follow the logic, I explain to him that at some point he does have to leave. I mean, it's not like he can just move in. My boyfriend might notice, possibly object. So I've been thinking. The plan was that I give him $20 and call a cab. Then when the cab stopped at the corner I would go outside with a sheet or blanket and shake it out, like I was airing it, holding it high and wide. This would block the view from one end of the road. If his attackers were on the block side they would see a young woman shaking out a blanket, a cab at a stop sign, and then it pulling away / me going back and with nothing to indicate anyone had gotten into the cab. If they saw from the other side, bad luck, but in his shoes I'd just instruct the cab to take me to the cop shop. Beats getting stabbed to death over a drug debt. We implemented the plan. He was gone. I had a good stress cry and then called 911. Fat old cop said he probably was just breaking into trucks in the yard and spooked himself. He didn't want to do the paperwork. Young cop was so excited to have an attempted murder / forcible confinement thing and was so disappointed that fat old cop was adamant he not write it up that way. 2 weeks later my boyfriend was hanging out while I was out and the dude showed back up and paid back the $20 and told him to thank me for not freaking out, bandaging him up, helping him escape, etc. I was living away from home at 18 over 19 to go to school. A big group of us were out drinking and we were outside smoking, talking to the doorman. After a few minutes the doorman started sending us inside and talking about some kids with orphans. Ha was calm and nobody panicked or got stressed. When we were all inside he said we should step away from the windows and he locked the door. That's when we figured something was up, but he kept calm and everyone just kept on drinking. After about an hour we were getting antsy and he told us that there were at least 2 people outside shooting at the bar. We were kept in there for about 5 hours while the police were looking for the guys. It was a pretty small town, so if we left it would be pretty easy to find us, since anyone outside in the streets were from the bar. The bar owner gave us free drinks and let us smoke inside to keep the mood up, and at about 7 in the morning the police came fully suited up with shields, heavy weapons and dogs to take us to a bus that would drive us home to the dorms. None of us got stressed or worried thanks to the doorman. Fun night all in all. Okay, so this is a funny story, but our high school cop was a bro and would sometimes bait a few lucky kids out of class and take us up to the station for assisting the police in training exercises, like in this case, a hostage situation. He picked us from the drama class so we could really ham it up. We get to the room, a phone is put in. He instructs us hostages to be wailing and as distracting as possible. Our hostage taker was instructed to follow a little scripted manual of what the person might sound like. Cameras were on us for monitoring. The cop they were training was new, like this was his first simulation new. He was doing pretty well, until our hostage taker started listing demands. He asked for a pizza, or $1,000 and a copy of a King James Bible. The baby cop said, actually, that sounds pretty fair. Sure, we can get you that. Then his senior officer started yelling over the phone, "No you idiot, we don't just give him everything he wants with nothing in return." Then baby cop says, "But we have money and the pizza place is right over there," probably not realizing he's still on speakerphone. We all are laughing as the senior cop starts chewing him out again. Our school cop comes in with an exasperated look and has us start all over again. Not sure if this is a hostage situation, but it's similar. When I was 7, my biological dad kept us from my mom. They were divorced, and he got to see my brother and I on the weekends, and was going to try to kidnap us and take us to Texas to live with his parents. Long story short, the entire street plus the local sheriff's department got involved, and we got out of the house an hour or so later. He didn't go to jail for some reason though, and now he's off somewhere unknown. There was a hostage situation at my high school. It was a Lutheran high school, so every morning the students and teachers would congregate in the gym for announcements and prayers. It was mid-September, and everyone was seated on the bleachers and the pastor was starting to give announcements when a former student, Danny, who had been expelled the year prior, entered the gym with what turned out to be an airsoft pistol with the orange nozzle removed. He was wearing a trench coat and had bleached his hair. Danny walked up to the pastor waving the gun around at the crowd and teachers and saying he wanted his story to be heard and for everyone there to know what he had been put through. A little background on the guy: he was a total goofball weeaboo and didn't fit the cold loner school shooter stereotype. In our 11th year, Danny developed a crush on another girl in my grade, Candy. It wasn't reciprocated, but Candy's friends thought it was funny to tell him she was interested and dropped notes in his locker from Candy, so the kid continued pursuing her. They stopped after a while, but Danny didn't, and his attempts to get her attention crossed from schoolboy crush into threatening stalker territory. It got to the point where Candy was frightened, and her father approached the school board and told them to fix the problem. So he got expelled and told not to return for his senior year. So, with a summer to stew over the fact that he felt wronged and misunderstood, Danny decided the best way to be heard was to force everyone to listen. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, the pastor stuttered his way through a letter the student had written, while the teachers ushered kids who were seated at the ends of the bleachers through emergency exits. It is worth mentioning that Candy was out of school sick that day, something Danny had not anticipated, and he was quite agitated when he realized she wasn't there to listen. The majority of the students had been let out, and at one point Danny turned to speak to one of the teachers behind him and was tackled by several teachers. At this point, SWAT officers appeared and apprehended Danny and shuffled the last of us students out of the gymnasium. They had actually been in the gym for a while. As students were leaving the emergency exits, officers were entering and positioning themselves around the room and were ready to take Danny out via gunfire once the majority of the students had been removed from the situation. Not sure if it was because our attention was on Danny and the pastor, or these guys were legit shadow ninjas, because up to that moment I hadn't seen a single one. Follow up to the event wasn't that exciting. They had counselors at the school for a couple weeks after to help students cope, and of course the ones milking the trauma the most were Candy's friends, who felt personally targeted during the hostage situation. Later that day we found out it had been an airsoft rifle, but Danny also had a 6-inch hunting knife on him. A year later, Danny would plead guilty to uttering threats and possession of a weapon in a hostage-taking situation, and get 6 months house arrest followed by 18 months probation. When I was 18, I was with my friends at the pool at my apartment complex around midnight. I lived in a good area, wasn't concerned. My 3 friends were in the large pool. I had my feet dipped into the hot tub, and there were 2 young boys about 12 years old on the opposite side of the pool. We were all talking when a large, bald, Mexican man came into the pool, and we thought nothing of it and just kept talking. Then he approached my friends in the pool and he asked one of my friends what their name was. My friend responds, Anthony. The bald man then turns and walks to me at the hot tub and says, "And what's your name?" I take a second and look at my friends like WTF, and I respond to the guy with my name, which is Anthony, and my only guess is that he was very drunk and he thought that we were fucking with him by giving him the same name. So within 5 seconds of me answering, he punches me in the face. It hits the side of my nose, nothing broken fortunately, but it starts to bleed. Then he walks around and hits me twice in the back of the head. My entire body is frozen, not so much out of fear, but out of shock, because I could not comprehend why someone would just punch me in the face. My friends started to shout and get out of the pool, but when they did, the bald guy ran over to the pool and just lingered over them, which kept them in the pool. None of my friends were particularly burly and this guy was a big dude. I stood up and was like, I need to go home, I need to wash the blood off my face. And he told me that there was a water fountain in the corner, so I slowly was like, okay, and I washed my face off. I sat back down on a pool chair across from him while my friends were in the pool. Basically every time my friends moved he would snap up and threaten them. We didn't know if he had a weapon, but we were young and afraid. He ended up befriending me and was telling me how he didn't trust my friends in the pool, and I was like, man, they're cool. But he wasn't buying it. Then he spoke to the 2 young kids in the pool and told them to get something. They brought back ceviche and Domino's pizza, and he insisted I eat it. I just pretended to put ceviche on a chip and eat it. He then asked me questions about what religion I was. I answered I think they're all interesting, and I love to hear about them all. Then he offered to hire a prostitute, but I told him no, I already had a girl, I'm gay. Shortly after I had bonded, and it had been 2 hours, and I said, my dude, me and my friends have to go, it's very late. And he accepted it. He finally let my friends move without jumping at them. I put my shoes on, and he was like, hey, nice hanging out, good talking to you, man. Then he flashed a gang sign as I left, and I flashed it back cause I wasn't finna piss that dude off again, and we left. So while not your typical hostage situation, we were kept there out of fear, especially since the little kids who were also a tad afraid told me he's drunk. Just please don't call the police. I was dating this girl for a while and we ended up breaking up, but still seeing parts of each other. We will call her Sasha. She had a key to my apartment still, which in hindsight was a really bad idea. Even though we were not dating anymore, she would get very jealous when I would be around other girls. I had the same issue with her being around other guys. I started hanging out with another girl, we will call her Nancy, that was a friend of a previous girlfriend that I had a couple of years before, but that doesn't really matter. I started hanging out with Nancy on a platonic level, not thinking that she was really into me, still not sure what was going on there, but it drove Sasha absolutely mad, and I was okay with that, because I was damaged that Sasha had broken up with me. One night when I was out with Nancy, Sasha found out that I was with her. Oops. I'm sure I did not want that to happen. Started freaking out, went to my apartment, and held my guinea pig hostage. She started sending me picture messages of him saying things like, you wouldn't want anything to happen to guinea pig, now, would you? She even took his entire cage thing outside and put it in a snowbank and took a picture of it and sent it to me saying something like she was going to leave him out there to freeze and I needed to come back to put him inside. Nancy kept telling me to just stop talking to her, but I kept texting her and it kept getting worse and worse. I ended up driving back to my apartment about 35 minutes or so, pretty buzzed up, and can't really remember what happened after that, but I know I got super defensive, made her jealous, buckled and did whatever I could to make her and I okay for that evening. We probably ended up having sex after all of that messed up stuff happened. I know I did not really handle things that well. My guinea pig ended up okay, but he died not too long after that. SASHA** and I ended up blowing up completely, and it was really messy, and it left me in a pretty dark place. I don't know if I added much to what you were looking for, but it felt good for me to type this out and know that someone out there is reading it. I'm not sure how accurate everything is, because I have made Sasha out to be so evil in my head that I have completely altered my view of her, taking away almost all of the good that I remember, and probably exaggerating the bad things that she did. I was not a very good person during that whole time frame either, and I'm sure I'm mostly to blame for how everything ended up. Rest in peace, guinea pig. I was kidnapped by a cartel when I was young and still living in Mexico. I was coming back from a party a little too late, and on the intersection before my house I was closed off by 2 black Suburbans. 6 men armed with axe came out pointing at me and shouting me to get out. My legs have never felt like that. I wanted to move them, but I just couldn't do it. They opened the door and threw me out of the car and covered my head. I heard someone driving my car, and then it was just an eternity from there. I heard them talk about who they killed the other day, who was the meanest one, how so and so was a pussy, and how much drug they were going to use that night. Sometimes they'd push me or tap my head with their guns and remind me of who was in charge. How if they ever wanted to, they could kill me. We finally got to some place, and I remember the strong smell of iron, butts, cigarettes and weed when I walked in. The cries of women, children, and men begging for mercy and for God to help them. I still have nightmares about that day. They forced me to watch them shoot a kid I befriended during my time there. The first time I saw someone lose their life. 3 days later, and a lot of money paid in ransom later, I was released and reminded of how lucky I was they didn't lay a finger on me. They dumped me off on the side of the road with my bag still on, and the keys to my car. I was to not take off my bag for at least 30 minutes, or I'd be shot in the head. I remember unlocking my door, getting in, and just sitting in my car. I went to sleep, and woke up about 4 hours later.